In her book, she says the White House was broken. This after 2 years along a president who wasn't housebroken. But she only realized this after she stopped getting paid to defend it. But like Jake Tapper's book, it's a new genre of Biden tell-alls that should be subtitled, "I had no idea because I'm severely retarded."
Just when you thought Karine Jean-Pierre had perfected the art of sidestepping questions with a smile and a binder, enter Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly, turning the press briefing into a full-blown comedy roast. Gutfeld's firing off punchlines faster than she can flip through her notes, while Megyn slices through the spin like a buzzsaw on espresso, and Karine, she's blinking like she just got hit with a follow-up question out of nowhere. Whatever they said, it sent her talking points into a tailspin, and it's savagely funny.
The world who have literally voted until this last election, which put me over the edge on voting more for Republicans. But literally now I've voted in 9 presidential elections. God, I'm getting old. And I voted, it was 4 and 4 Dems, 4 Republican votes up until I voted for Trump again this last time. So it was 5 Republicans, 4 Dems. I've been a registered Democrat. I've been a registered Republican. And now I've been a registered independent for 17 years. That's what an actual political independent looks like. Not like somebody who worked for 2 Democrat administrations until they got the stank of desperation all over them. And she ran for the hills trying to pretend she knows what independent.
If sarcasm were an Olympic event, Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly would be standing on the podium with gold medals. Their latest target, Karine Jean-Pierre, press secretary, who handles tough questions like live grenades, pull the pin, toss it back, and hope someone else takes the hit.
Applications you gotta fill out. What, you think I meant vaginas?
Ew.
Right. Disgusting people. But now everyone says she's incompetent and lazy. You know, after they called me racist for saying that. That's not why I'm racist.
Nope.
Let's be honest, Karine's press briefings have morphed into a kind of avant-garde performance art, where giving a straight answer seems to violate the rules. Gutfeld, the reigning king of cable comedy masquerading as commentary, had an absolute field day. He treated her latest briefing like an improv night at a struggling comedy club only. No one was laughing with her. They were laughing at her repeatedly and with growing intensity.
But really, they're just jealous. These colleagues also played along with a hoax, saying that Joe was doing 75 one-arm push-ups while finishing the New York Times crossword puzzle all before breakfast. They're just pissed she beat them to the publisher's office and to the bank. I expect to see more of these books because of the lifeboats these rats will use to try and escape the shipwreck of the past 4 years. So KJP is now an independent, because apparently pretending to be apolitical sells better than admitting your last job was gaslighting America.
Gutfeld's monologue of mockery transformed Karine into a tragicomic figure. Stumbling through the wreckage of logic and coherence, picture someone trying to explain advanced calculus while being swarmed by bees. That's the kind of chaotic energy she brings to the podium. And Greg, he cranked up the volume, slapped on a fedora labeled Sarcasm CEO, and gleefully poured gasoline on the rhetorical dumpster fire.
That's how bad the stink is when one of its worst offenders is fleeing this rancid armpit called the Democrat Party. So should we buy her book? Well, only if your family and friends have a sense of humor. It'll make a great gag gift. You know, like fake dog or rubber vomit. Only the stench here.
Meanwhile, Megyn Kelly, the expert at delivering a smile with 1,000 razor-sharp paper cut, took a more surgical approach. If Greg showed up with a sledgehammer, Megyn brought a scalpel and a high-powered microscope, zeroing in on the most laughable absurdities Karine tried to pass off as serious commentary.
And her fans are already sharpening their crayons. And it's just what we need, a tell-all from the woman who spent 2 years telling everyone that Joe just had a cold and not rigor mortis. If the title hadn't already been taken, it should be called Art of the Steal. KJP also says she's leaving the Democratic Party. I say God bless her. Not many people have the patience to wait in a line that long.
Megyn Kelly dissected Karine Jean-Pierre's press briefing like a pathologist examining a frog with 3 livers, meticulous, unflinching, and mildly horrified. She didn't just expose the incompetence. She spotlighted the theatrical absurdity. If Karine was auditioning for a political remake of Clueless, she didn't just land the role, she owned it. One moment that sent Gutfeld into overdrive. Like a toddler hopped up on espresso was, Karine's attempt to explain inflation as if it were some kind of quirky new TikTok challenge. Struggling to keep a straight face, he launched into what he called the press secretary's guide to financial fiction. A magical world where sky-high prices signal prosperity and a shrinking dollar is just on a summer diet. That's when the gloves came off. Gutfeld rolled out a full parody segment mimicking Karine's signature style, dramatic pauses, circular logic, and her uncanny ability to drop completely unrelated references like mic drops. He wrapped it up by applauding her as the only person who could take a yes or no question and turn it into a 15-minute monologue ending in national confusion and collective regret.
Karine Jean-Pierre reinventing herself as an independent. This from, it's everywhere, but this is just from the New York Post write-up, that she claims she's no longer a Democrat. She's coming out with a book, a memoir, hyping, says the New York Post, a, quote, broken Biden administration. They go on to say that it's a tell-all she's working on now, and it's going to be a look inside. Independent is the name of it. A look inside a broken White House, outside the party lines, due in October. Hachette, which is publishing it, says Jean-Pierre did not come to her decision to be an independent lightly.
Megyn, naturally, took the cerebral route. Her takedown felt like watching an etiquette instructor calmly explain why anyone eating soup with a fork should be banned from dinner parties permanently. She delivered a bullet point, incisive bullet points could roll their eyes, highlighting Karine's greatest hits. The ever-elusive "let me circle back to that," the vague "we're working on that," and the no mythic "the president has been clear," which by the end of Megyn's segment felt less like a statement and more like the setup to a cosmic joke. Karine metaphorically tripped over her own binder of talking points and landed squarely in the arms of unrelenting mockery. There was no need to quote Megyn directly, the tone said it all. Part disappointed teacher, part stand-up comic, and 100% surgical precision. If competence were currency, Karine was deeply overdrawn, and Megyn was the bank calling in the debt. But Greg wasn't done, not even close. He capped it all off with what can only be described as a dramatic reenactment of a Karine Jean-Pierre press briefing, starring a goldfish in a tiny blazer. Somehow, the goldfish was more concise, more coherent, and even better at dodging questions. It got applause. And honestly, it earned it.
In this book, she may focus her ire on figures aside from Biden. Quote, she has served two American presidents, Obama and Biden. She takes us through the 3 weeks that led to Biden's abandoning his bid for a second term and the betrayal by the Democrat Party that led to his decision. The tease goes, and she's going to regale us with a hard-hitting yet hopeful critique defining what it means to be part of the growing percentage of our fractured electorate that is independent, why it can be worthwhile to carve a political space more loyal to personal beliefs than a party affiliation, and what questions you need to ask yourself to determine where you fit politically. You've got to be.
In case anyone missed the joke, Greg Gutfeld graciously offered translations of Karine Jean-Pierre's statements into plain English. For example, "We're prioritizing the American people" translated to, "We're prioritizing not taking responsibility for anything." At that point, Greg might as well have been holding a decoder, ring-turning bureaucratic babble into brutal clarity. Megyn, meanwhile, zoomed in on Karine's uncanny talent for stringing together 5 unrelated talking points and somehow ending up even further from the original question. She likened it to trying to assemble IKEA furniture using instructions, in Pig Latin, with half the parts swapped out for bananas. And yet, Karine soldiers on clip after clip, briefing after briefing with the dead-eyed optimism of someone either blissfully unaware or entirely unbothered. Even her wardrobe didn't escape the roast. Greg mused that her blazers appeared to be chosen by spinning a wheel labeled dystopian librarian and futuristic DMV manager. Megyn, ever more subtle, simply raised an eyebrow and noted that when your outfits are more organized than your messaging, it might be time for a rethink. Then came the graphs. Greg loves props. He unveiled a chart clearly made in MS Paint tracking Karine's approval to answer ratio. Spoiler alert, it was a flat line hovering at 0, with the occasional blip labeled answered something by accident.
Republicans hate her. She's not in any position to be a connector of our two-party system, and assuming she could be is just ego. It's so good. They're all ripping on her, some by name, saying how dumb she was, how she's a joke, and literally nobody's buying her ability to be an independent connector who somehow is going to heal the partisan breach, Stu. Back to my original point when her soundbite was playing of how those were all lies.
In the world of political commentary, this wasn't a bloodbath, it was a well-catered satire banquet, and Karine Jean-Pierre wasn't just the guest of honor. She was the main course. Greg and Megyn didn't dismantle her performance out of malice, it was just too easy, like mocking a spelling bee contestant who spells cat with a Q. It wasn't cruel, it was instinct. By the time the segments wrapped, the audience wasn't just entertained. They were united in shared confusion. Because if listening to a public official speak feels like solving a cryptic crossword while being chased by a bear, something has gone seriously off the rails. But not to worry, Gutfeld and Kelly will be back, mockery locked and loaded, ready for the next baffling round of bureaucratic beat poetry. And Karine, she'll be there too, binder in hand, blinking bravely into the chaos.